Hello, History for Little Pilgrims. I'm glad to see you. We are in week 30 of our school, and that's really hard to believe because that's almost the end. In fact, this is probably the last video I'll do for this class because the last class that I usually do, I can't really do online because you'd make a great big placemat and I have a little book that I've made for you, but I will try and get that stuff all to you with your 3-ring notebook sometime, hopefully soon. Today we're going to talk about a very special place in Texas called the Alamo. Have you heard of it, the Alamo? It's a very important part of our history, and so we're going to learn about it. But first of all, we are going to say our pledges. So let's go ahead and get your flags out if you have them, and put your right hand over your heart, and let's go ahead and say our American pledge. Okay, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. Let's do our Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Okay, good. Do y'all know that now without having to look? Hopefully you do. All right, let's talk about the Alamo. The Alamo is a very important place in San Antonio. Maybe some of you have seen it. It was a mission many years ago, way before any of us were born. You know what a mission is? It is a place that many years ago, when Mexico was first becoming developed and the explorers would come, and they kind of had explorers just like the United States did, but they also had priests who would come and try to tell people about Jesus. And the priests lived in missions, and they were usually beautiful big buildings made out of rock, at least in Texas, made out of rock, and people could come and hear about Jesus. And sometimes, there was medical help, and sometimes there was a way to feed them. It was just a place for people to come. And so the Alamo at one time was a mission. But that's not the part that we are going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the time when where there was a big battle. Now, the Alamo used to be in a place that was not in America. It used to be in Mexico. And there were a lot of Americans who lived there, but they were not Mexicans. They were Americans. And pretty soon, they sort of thought they wanted to have their independence. They wanted to be that part of the country where they lived. They wanted it to be part of America rather than part of Mexico. So a big army came from Mexico to try and conquer them, and it was a very small group of men that were in the Alamo, and it was a huge battle. And I am going to read a story about it, but before I do, let's go ahead and look at your packet. You'll see a page that looks like this. It says the Alamo at the top, and it tells you where it is. And that's actually a really good picture of it. This is the part that was the mission, okay? There was a lot of walls around it, and there were a lot of other things that aren't there anymore, but this is the main part that's standing now. And so all you're going to do with this is you're going to color it. It was kind of a limestone rock, so it was kind of an off-white, maybe a little bit of pinkish, but it was very strong. Like I said, it's still standing. And so you can just decorate that. This is going to go in your Texas book. You see it's going to be page 11. So that's all you're going to do. You're going to decorate that while I'm reading the book. Also, there's one other piece of paper, and it looks like this. It says draw and write. Well, you don't have to write. You just have to draw, because I have already written on there, and written, "The brave fighters in the Alamo fought for Texas independence." And that's what our book is going to be about. But you can draw a picture of the brave fighters in the Alamo fighting for Texas independence while we're reading the book. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. You can work on those 2 pages while I'm reading it, and then we're going to talk about something else when we're done. Okay? The name of the book is, of course, The Alamo. And here's a picture of the real Alamo, so you can sort of see the color of it. It's mostly just white. And then there's a beautiful, big, heavy wooden door. All right, I'm going to open it up and let's take a look. Do you know the name of this big stone structure? It's in San Antonio. It's called the Alamo. It's in San Antonio, Texas. A great battle took place there in 1836. People were fighting for their freedom. In the 1700s, Texas and Mexico belonged to Spain. And it says Spanish ships brought settlers to Texas and Mexico. That's where some of the Catholic priests that I was talking about came from. Okay. Missionaries from Spain came to Texas. Missionaries are people sent by a church to teach others about that church's faith. The missionaries came to teach Native Americans about Christianity. And here it says a Spanish missionary holds a Christian cross while Native Americans surround him. Okay, so he's telling people about Jesus. The missionaries built a mission so they would have a place to do this. A mission is a group of buildings where missionaries live and work. The Alamo was that mission, but the missionaries didn't call it the Alamo. They called it the Mission San Antonio de Valero. No, maybe later on it'll tell why we called it the Alamo now. I don't know if it does. I can't remember. Native Americans watch as some missionaries walk outside after a church service. That's what this picture is about. Missionaries began building San Antonio de Valero in 1724. That was a long time ago. They used blocks of limestone. Limestone is a hard rock. It's made of shells or coral. Another good picture of the Alamo. The missionaries built a church and a monastery. A monastery is a special house for religious leaders. The missionaries put high walls around the buildings. So yeah, a lot of those high walls, it's hard, you can't really see very well anymore. Workers put high walls around the mission to keep the people and buildings safe. So it was a big compound, and on this side was the actual mission, and then there was all kinds of buildings all around, places where people lived and stored things and things like that. The missionaries left in the late 1700s. The mission became a fort. Soldiers lived there. They called it the Alamo. Okay, so this is what the Alamo looked like in the 1800s. It hasn't changed much, actually. The Mexican people wanted to be free from Spain's rule. In 1821, they fought a war with Spain. Mexico won the war. It became an independent country. And here it says a Spanish general left and a leader of the Mexican army agreed to make Mexico independent. All right, so this is the Spanish soldier and this is the Mexican soldier. Here we go. Texas became part of Mexico. Many settlers came to Texas from the United States. The settlers had to live by Mexican laws, but the settlers didn't always like the laws. They were used to U.S. laws. They wanted Texas to be free. Okay, so here it says free land drew many settlers to Texas. So they lived in Mexico, but they weren't Mexicans. Okay. In 1832, General Santa Anna took power in Mexico. He wanted to keep Texas in Mexico. Santa Anna marched his army to the Alamo in 1836. Almost 2,000 Mexican soldiers were with him. This is a picture of Santa Anna. 2,000 soldiers. That's a lot of soldiers. Only 200 brave Texas soldiers were waiting behind the walls of the Alamo. They were ready to fight for their freedom. So it was 2,000 against 200. That's not a very good ratio, is it? Texas soldiers waited behind the walls of the Alamo. That's what this is showing. Okay. There's a picture of the battle. The Mexicans surrounded the Alamo for 2 weeks. They attacked its high walls. The Texas soldiers fought bravely, but it was still 200 in there, 2,000 out here. They forced the Mexican army away from the walls of the fort 3 times, but there were too many Mexicans. The Mexicans climbed the walls of the Alamo, and the final battle began. Here it says Texas soldiers fight from inside the Alamo. So there's a picture of them fighting from inside the Alamo. Okay. You know who was in the Alamo? Davy Crockett. He was one of the fighters. If you don't know about Davy Crockett, you might want to go find a book about him. The fight lasted less than an hour. Santa Anna's men killed all of the Texas soldiers. Isn't that sad? The Battle of the Alamo took place on March the 6th, 1836. 1836, yes. The people never forgot the men who died that day. The Alamo became a sign of their brave fight for freedom. So the Americans lost that battle, but it made other Americans realize how important it was, so they came back. Tried to conquer Mexico. The U.S. Army fought Santa Anna again a few weeks later. The Americans surprised the Mexicans. They shouted, "Remember the Alamo!" That was their big war cry. The U.S. Army defeated Santa Anna and the Mexican Army at the Battle of San Jacinto in 1836. That's what this picture is. The Battle of Saint Jacinto, or San Jacinto. All right, here we go. The U.S. Army won that battle, and Texas won independence from Mexico. In 1836, Texas became the Republic of Texas. 9 years later, it became a U.S. state. So before it became a state, it was its own country. Isn't that interesting? Santa Anna surrenders to the U.S. Army. That's what that picture's about. And he was I think he was wounded in that one, in that battle, but he was still okay. He surrendered. That means he said, okay, you can have your freedom. Restoring the Alamo. The U.S. Army began repairs to the Alamo in 1850. Then the Army left in 1876. Years later, the state of Texas bought the Alamo, and the state had the old buildings fixed. They were very old, and they'd been through lots of battles, so you can imagine what kind of shape they were in. This photo from 1868 shows the front of the Alamo and the walls of the monastery at the left. It's talking about this one. I guess this is where the wall is. Okay, so this is the front of the Alamo, and then there must have been a monastery in the back there. Okay. Visitors can see the old fort. A shrine honors those who died in battle there. The shrine at the battle lists the names of the people who died in the Battle of the Alamo. Visitors can also see the Long Barrack Museum. It holds historic artifacts, so this is inside the compound. Okay. The Long Barrack Museum holds paintings, weapons, and other artifacts from the time of the Texas Revolution. All those people who are visiting the Alamo. The Alamo has more visitors than any other site in Texas. More than 2 million people visit the Alamo each year. Here it says visitors wait in line to see inside the Alamo. When I went to the Alamo, the line wasn't that long. But I guess sometimes it is, depending on the time of the year you go. The historic site reminds the visitors of those who gave their lives so Texas could be free. So we're really grateful to them, aren't we? So here we go. That's the end of the story, but there's a map. It tells where the Alamo is. Over here are some fun facts. The name Alamo, this is what we wondered at the beginning of the story. The name Alamo may have come from the Spanish word alameda. It means poplar trees. Let's see here. This funny thing is coming up. Okay, and there's some other ones. Texas claimed its independence 4 days before the battle at the Alamo began. The men at the Alamo never found out. News traveled slowly back then. Frontiersman Davy Crockett played his fiddle before the final battle at the Alamo. He wanted to liven things up, so he wanted to cheer everybody up. The final Alamo battle began at 5 o'clock in the morning. The Alamo is about 30 feet tall and 60 feet wide. Wow, that might be a little hard to figure out in your head, so if you want to get out a great big huge measuring line, you can try and see how big the Alamo is, but it would even be better if you could go visit the Alamo. I hope you can do that someday. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. All right. So there's another very important place in Texas, and we aren't going to spend as much time on that, but it is called the state capitol. The state capitol is a beautiful, beautiful big building, and hopefully someday you can go see it also. It is in Austin, Texas. Austin is the state capital, and everybody and all the lawmakers and the governor and everybody work in this beautiful big building. This is where the different laws are made and different policies and everything that help Texas run smoothly. So here's a picture of the state capitol. It's number 12 of your Texas book. And you can decorate this too. There's, again, not a whole lot. This is kind of a pinkish color because it's limestone also, and granite. It's granite actually. And all these are trees. All this down here. Okay. We'll read one more book next week probably. Like I said, we don't have much we are going to do, but I may go ahead and pull out one more book that tells about the Texas Capitol. All right, in the Texas Capitol, it is where our governor works. What is a governor? A governor is kind of the guy, it's kind of like the president, except the president is in charge of the whole country. The governor is in charge of just a state. And so there are 50 governors in the United States because there are 50 states. But he's kind of the head guy in Texas government. And his name is Greg Abbott. And I have a couple things for you to do that you're going to work on today. And you can get it in your packet. You have one that's empty like this. It says governor. It says the governor of Texas is our state leader. It says do some research to complete the biography of our governor. Well, you don't even really have to do research because I've already sort of given you some of these answers. What you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and fill this out. And I've already given you in your packet, you have a finished copy of this. So all you have to do is copy it. You have a picture of Governor Abbott. Okay. You're going to cut that picture out and put it right in that box. The picture of Governor Abbott. All right, let's go through. I have made one that's finished, and you can look at it and copy it if you like. Or you can just look everything up yourself and write it. It's up to you. Governor's name. This is his name, Greg Abbott. The governor was born in Texas. He was born in Wichita Falls, but he grew up in a little town called Duncanville. And I used to teach many, many years ago when I was first starting to teach out of college. I taught 4th grade in Duncanville. Isn't that interesting? All right. He started being governor in 2015. So it's been quite a few years. He's been governor for quite a few years now. His wife is Cecilia Abbott, and his daughter is Audrey Abbott. Okay, just has one child, Audrey. Then there's an interesting fact about him. When he was a grown man, after he'd finished all his school, he'd gone to college, and he went to law school, and he'd finished all that, and he loved to do sports, and he was running one time. He was just out running, like a lot of people do for exercise, and a tree fell on him. So it kind of paralyzed him a little bit. And when you're paralyzed, that means you can't move something. So he was paralyzed from his waist down, and he can't walk anymore. So every time you see a picture of Governor Abbott, or if you see him on TV or anything like that, you'll see him in a wheelchair because he can't walk. So that's the interesting fact about him. But you know what? It hasn't stopped him from doing some very important things for Texas, has it? He has kept going. He's done a lot of really good things for Texas. So this is Governor Abbott. You can finish this page when you're done with all your other pages. And that is all we're going to do today. That is all we're going to do today. And so, like I said, next week, I have something that I can't really do online. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to get everybody's notebooks to them because you've been working hard on them all year. Oh, there was one thing I forgot to tell you. Oops, very important. So now after you have finished this page here, the capital, see it has page 12 on it? I'd like you to go ahead and gather all your papers that you've done for your Texas book. There's a cover that you did, and then you have pages 1 all the way through 12. So you can put all those together into a little book, and then you can staple the left side of it, and there you go. There's your Texas book. So I hope you can do that, because you can always look back and see what's the Texas tree, what's the Texas state bird, what's the Texas state motto, and all that. Actually, I don't know if the motto is in there. Yeah, I think it is. Okay, so make yourself a book and enjoy it, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful summer, and hopefully I'll see you next year. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.